Okay, so we can start. We'll begin. So we'll start with a short meditation. Okay, so everybody can take a comfortable but firm seat. Yeah, you keep the upper part of the body straight and upright, but relaxed. Hands can be placed on the lap, right hand over the left with the thumbs touching, or the hands can be placed on the knees or on the thighs. The head should be held with the nose directly above the navel, the belly button, the mouth closed, the eyes lightly closed, and the chin can be pulled in just a very slight angle. And then we set up mindfulness in the body. So first, you're simply mindful of the body in the sitting position. And now let the mindfulness settle into the body just for 1 minute of silence. And then you turn your mindfulness towards the breath. And the task is simply when breathing in to be mindful, breathing in, breathing in. When breathing out, to be mindful, breathing out, breathing out. If you find it helpful, you can make a light mental note when breathing in, the note in. When breathing out, the mental note out, out. But the focus should be on the felt bodily experience of the breathing, not on the mental note itself. If you lose complete, as you're mindfully breathing in and out, various thoughts will come into the mind. Just let them come and let them go, and keep the mind on the breath. But if you completely lose track of the breath, as soon as you recognize this, you make the mental note thinking, thinking, or wandering mind, wandering mind. And then you bring the mind back first to the body in the sitting position, observe the body for a moment, and then return to the breath. Okay, we will continue now in silence for about 10 minutes. Okay, just for about a minute now, we switch the meditation to loving kindness, wishing that all people and all beings in this world will be safe, happy, and healthy. Okay, everybody can relax now, and we'll be starting the class now, starting the discourse. Okay, so I welcome everybody to the beginning of this new series of talks for speakers of Russian. So last year, I gave a series of talks providing a broad overview of the Buddha's teaching. And this new series will have a more specific theme. The theme will be the paths to liberation in early Buddhism. We find in the early Buddhist texts that the Buddha presents the path to liberation in different ways. Probably he does this in order to fit the interests, the capacities, the needs of the people that he's teaching. But all of these different formulations are different ways of looking at what is essentially the same path to liberation. Yeah, I will give a simile for this. It's like we have different kinds of dogs. There can be a Cocker Spaniel, a German Shepherd, a Collie, many different kinds of dogs, but they're all dogs. So similarly, we have different formulations of the path, but they are all the path to liberation. So in today's class, I'll be covering the Noble Eightfold Path. And for those who are already experienced students of the Dhamma, today's talk will probably not present anything that's really new. I already covered the Noble Eightfold Path in the course last year, but I thought it's important when presenting different versions of the path to liberation to start with the Noble Eightfold Path, because that is the most common expression of the Buddha's path to liberation. We see in the first discourse of the Buddha, the discourse on turning the wheel of the Dharma, the Buddha gives special emphasis to the Noble Eightfold Path. When he met his first disciples, the first 5 disciples, he announced to them that he had discovered the path to the deathless, and he identified that path as the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so let us begin by looking at the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, and then we'll take a look at how the path is applied in practice. That is, we want to see how the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path work together. To help us come to understand the Noble Eightfold Path, I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so first, we'll just run first through the 8 factors, then we'll look at their constituents. So you can see we have first right view, then samma sankappa, which I translate right intention. And these 2 factors are sometimes grouped together and called the wisdom factors. Okay, then we have the next three factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And these three factors are grouped together as the factors of moral practice or ethical practice. And then we have the last three factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And these three factors are grouped together as we call this the samadhi group, the factors concerned with meditative development. Okay, so now let us see what are the particular constituents of these factors. Okay, so the Buddha begins the Noble Eightfold Path with right view. And I think it is right view that makes all of the other factors part of a path to liberation. So without right view, for example, we could have intentions of goodwill or loving kindness, intentions of harmlessness. Many people who are not Buddhist practitioners can have thoughts or intentions like that. And without right view, many people in the world could have still right speech, right action, right livelihood. But that practice, that ethical practice without right view, would not be part of the path to liberation. And nowadays, here in the West, many people in every walk, every way of life are practicing mindfulness. Yeah, but again, without right view, this practice of mindfulness is not part of the path to liberation. And even some meditators and yogis outside the domain of Buddhism are able to gain the jhanas or meditative absorptions. But without right view, that practice of samadhi is not part of the path to liberation. So therefore, the Buddha calls right view the guide to the practice of the other seven factors of the path. So it's right view that unifies, that unites the other seven factors and makes them part of a path to liberation. Okay, so now let's look through these factors, and we can see that the way the Buddha explains right view, he says right view is understanding dukkha or suffering, understanding the origin of dukkha, understanding the cessation of dukkha, and understanding the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. So you could see from this that right view really means understanding the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, and it's interesting to note that in the Four Noble Truths, the fourth truth is understanding the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So part of right view is understanding the path that we have to travel to reach liberation, to reach the end of dukkha. Okay, then from right view, one moves to right intention. Yeah, so the Pali word here is sankappa. Yeah, so we might give other, I'm thinking in English, other words for this: right motivation, right purpose. But we could say that right view is an intellectual understanding of the Four Noble Truths, and right intention is the motivation that comes from understanding the Four Noble Truths. So the way I understand it, when we understand the truth of suffering in relation to ourselves, this leads to renunciation or detachment. And when we understand that all other people and all sentient beings are subject to suffering, this leads to the intention of goodwill and the intention of harmlessness. So in this way, our view influences our intentions, purposes, aims. Okay, then when we have the right intention or the right purposes, then we have to apply that to our activities. So in this way, right intention will give rise to the three ethical factors of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And so under right speech, the Buddha has enumerated or given four factors, four constituents of right speech. So we have abstaining from false speech, or in other words, telling deliberate lies. Yeah, and I would say that this factor is so important today, in today's world, because so many destructive policies on the part of governments and different groups in society are motivated and driven by lies, by false speech. And so in our personal lives, we have to make a firm commitment to speak the truth, not to spread false rumors and to promote lies. Okay, then the second aspect of right speech is abstaining from, here it's translated, slanderous speech, or we might also use divisive speech. Yeah, and what this means is that when we have a group of people or two groups of people who are friends, when you spread reports, when you make statements that are intended to break up the friendship between those people and create enmity between them, that is divisive speech. Like, say, we have two people, A and B, and they're on friendly terms, but then I tell B, A has said something bad about you, and I tell B that A has said something bad about you. So A and B have been friends, but now A and B become enemies. Yeah. Naturally, we have a kind of deep tendency to try to say bad things about other people. And so one way that I found very helpful to follow this principle of right speech is never to say anything bad about another person. Of course, sometimes one has to criticize another person, but you have to check your state of mind before you speak anything bad about them. And so if you want to criticize another person, you have to do so in order to create improvement in those people, not because you want to harm them or injure them. Okay, then the third constituent of right speech is abstaining from, it's called harsh speech, or we might also call this angry speech. So this will be speech that comes from a mind of anger and ill will, and that hurts the feelings of other people. And then the fourth aspect of right speech is abstaining from, here is called idle chatter, or we could also call it just maybe random gossip. Yeah, like here in America, there are whole magazines and TV programs and websites which are all about gossip. So this movie star and his wife are having fights. This music star and his girlfriend are splitting up. That would be kinds of idle chatter or gossip. And so we have the positive counterparts to these types of wrong speech. So we have truthful speech, speaking the truth. So truthful speech, then as the opposite of slanderous speech, we have unifying speech, speech that promotes friendship among people. Then as the opposite of harsh speech, we have gentle speech. And as the opposite of idle chatter, we have meaningful speech, speech that conveys important information. Okay, and then under right act, we come to the fourth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. This is right action. And then here we have three factors. These are basically the same as the first three precepts: to abstain from killing or taking life, to abstain from stealing, to abstain from sexual misconduct. Yeah, and so for householders or lay people, abstaining from sexual misconduct will mean remaining faithful to one's partner. And for monastics, monks and nuns, this would mean observing celibacy, no sexual activity at all. So we could say that these three, corresponding to these three principles of right action, we could say compassionate action, action that protects the lives of others, and the positive counterpart of abstaining from stealing is honesty. And the counterpart of abstaining from sexual misconduct will be remaining faithful to one's partner, and for monastic, celibacy. Okay, then we come, the fifth factor is right livelihood, and that is just in the suttas, this is defined very simply as giving up wrong livelihood and earning one's living by a right form of livelihood. Yeah, so this is very general, but in some of the suttas, we find the Buddha listing 5 types of business in which a layperson should not engage. Let me see if I can remember them. I didn't list them. So no dealing in weapons, poisons, living beings, meat, and I think the fifth, alcohol, and today we would say drugs. So no dealing in weapons, poisons, living beings, raising animals for slaughter, in meat, and selling alcohol and other drugs. So you could see from this list that so many types of businesses in today's world fall under the heading of wrong livelihood. Okay, so now we have the 3 ethical factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And that those factors are the foundation for the process of mental development aimed at concentration and insight. So in, in training the mind, the first factor that we need is right effort. And that also is divided into 4 aspects. So we have the effort to restrain unwholesome states, to prevent unwholesome states from arising. And then we have the effort to abandon the unwholesome states that have already arisen. And then we have the effort to develop or to give rise to wholesome states not yet arisen. And then the effort to maintain and to increase the wholesome states that have already arisen. Okay, so you could see how systematic and methodical the Buddha is just from looking at the fourfold division of right effort. Yeah, he divides the states of mind into the unwholesome and the wholesome. And then with regard to each, there are two functions, making four aspects of right effort. Okay, then next we come to right mindfulness. And with this, to see this more clearly, I'm going to open another file. Let me find it. Okay, first I'll go, we have right mindfulness with four divisions, and then right concentration explained as the four jhanas. Okay, now to see these in more detail, I'm going to open another file. Okay, so we have right mindfulness, and right mindfulness is explained by way of the four, what's called the four foundations of mindfulness. That is observing the body, feelings, states of mind, and then a broad category called dhammas or phenomena. Yeah, so these are the four objects of mindfulness: the body, feelings, states of mind, and dhammas. And so what is meant, first of all, what is meant by mindfulness itself? So the word mindfulness originally meant, the word sati in the Indian languages originally meant remembering. But the Buddha uses the word mindfulness to mean keeping the object in mind, not losing the object, not forgetting the object. And then he divides the field of experience into these four basic categories. And so we start off with the mindfulness of the body, which is kayanupassana, observation of the body. And so we have, under the observation of the body, we have various exercises. And the first of these, which is often taken as the basic meditation object, is mindfulness of breathing. So this means that when breathing in, breathing out, what we are doing is mindfully observing the process of breathing. And we could say in the Buddhist system of meditation that mindfulness of breathing, I call it the root or fundamental meditation object. Yeah, and I take mindfulness of breathing to be the basis for the whole process of meditative practice in Buddhism. And I think the mindfulness of breathing maybe is unique to the Buddha's teaching. In the Hindu system of yoga, there is a practice called pranayama, which is controlling the breath in various ways. But mindfulness of breathing is quite different. It's not a way of controlling the breath, but simply observing the breath. Okay, then under observation of the body, next we have observation of the 4 postures. So we hold the body mainly in these 4 postures of sitting, when we're sitting down, standing, or getting up, walking, and then lying down in the bed. So whatever posture one is holding the body in, one knows that one is holding the body in that posture. And maybe of these 4 postures, the one that's used most often as an object of meditation is walking. Because we have a practice that we call walking meditation, usually used between periods of sitting meditation. So in walking meditation, we usually choose a space about 15 or 20 steps, and we walk back and forth, just being mindful of the act of walking. Okay, next under observation of the body, we have something called clear comprehension. This means clearly knowing all of one's activities in daily life. So whether one is walking, looking around, moving the limbs, getting dressed, bathing, speaking, any activity, one clearly knows what one is doing while one is doing it. There are some other activities under observation of the body. I won't go into all the details now. So we want to move on to get an overview of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And so we have next the contemplation or the observation of feeling. The feelings are distinguished into 3 primary types: pleasant, painful, and neutral feeling. So what's meant by feeling is, we say, the tone of experience, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral. And then we have the observation of mind, which means knowing the state of mind. And these states of mind are distinguished into 8 pairs. And here I've just listed the first pairs because these are most useful for us. And so we have a state of mind associated with raga or lust, and the state of mind when the mind is temporarily free from lust. And similarly, we have a mind that's overcome by hatred or anger, and the mind without hatred, without anger. And then a mind with confusion or delusion, a mind without confusion. Yeah, so lust, hatred, and confusion, these are sometimes called the 3 poisons or the 3 bad roots. So here one distinguishes whether the mind is overcome by one or another of these 3 poisons, or whether the mind is free from those 3 poisons. The 4th pair, we actually have 2 undesirable or 2 bad states. On the one hand, sometimes the mind is too tight, too rigid. On the other hand, the mind is too scattered, distracted. So if the mind is too tight, then we have to, first we recognize tight mind, and then we can relax the mind. If the mind gets scattered and distracted, then we know that the mind is distracted, and then we make the effort to collect the mind. Okay, then we come to the 4th foundation of mindfulness, This is called observation of dhammas or phenomena. And these are phenomena that are contemplated by way of the Dhamma, by way of the Buddha's teaching. Yeah, here I'm not going to go into any details, but you could just see that there are 5 groups of dharmas. So we have the 5 hindrances, the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense bases, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the 4 noble truths. Yeah, probably we'll, as we go through this series of Dharma talks, we'll be covering these groups in greater detail later. Okay, so this is right mindfulness in some detail. And so then the 8th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is right concentration. And that is explained as the 4 jhanas. These are the 4 meditative absorptions. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the jhanas in detail now because we'll be taking them in a later lecture in the series. What I want to do now is to look at a little sutta which shows how the Noble Eightfold Path is developed in practice. Okay, now what happens when one is developing the entire Noble Eightfold Path? At a high point, the path turns into what we call the development of insight or vipassana. And so this is a passage. It's from the middle length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya. It is the Sutta number 149, the discourse on the great sixfold base. So the sixfold base are the 6 sense faculties. And the passage that I'm going to be looking at shows how the 8 path factors are developed together. Okay, so now you can see section 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now he's speaking about a practitioner who knows and sees the I as it really is, who knows and sees visible forms as they are, who knows and sees I consciousness as it really is. And then he knows and sees eye contact as it really is, and he knows and sees the feeling based on the I as it really is. And so you could say when one has this right knowledge, then there is no lust or attachment to the I forms, I consciousness, and so on. So this is a person engaged in the contemplation of the 6 sense bases with insight. So then the text goes on to say that the view of a person who is contemplating in that way is right view. And then his intention on that occasion is right intention. His effort is right effort. His mindfulness is right mindfulness. And his concentration is right concentration. Yeah, so right here we have 5 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path working together. And then what about the 3 ethical factors? So that is bodily action, verbal action, and livelihood. That had been already purified as the basis for practicing insight meditation. And so it's in this way, he says, that the Noble Eightfold Path comes to fulfillment by development. Okay, then the text goes on to show how all the other factors come to development through this contemplation, but among them are these two things. This is samatha and vipassana, serenity and insight. And then through the development of serenity and insight, samatha and vipassana, one realizes these two things. These are like the goal of the teaching. True knowledge, here it's given as deliverance, but I like the rendering. Oops. So true knowledge or clear knowledge and liberation are achieved. So from this we see that practicing the Eightfold Noble Path together brings samatha and vipassana. It culminates in samatha and vipassana, and samatha and vipassana bring clear knowledge and liberation. And so this shows us very briefly how developing the Noble Eightfold Path is the path to liberation. Okay, I think I wanted to leave some time for questions, so I hope this talk has been useful.
The question is it meet the ethical points of the Eightfold Path, the job as a psychologist or therapist in the circus in the entertainment industry, so therapist for this stuff for the people who are engaged in the entertainment circus industry. Is it meet the Eightfold Path?
I think, do you mean, does it come under the heading of right livelihood?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So she's a psychologist for people in the entertainment industry. Is that it?
Right.
Yeah. So her intention is to help people, right? To help people work through their psychological problems. So that would certainly qualify under right livelihood. I don't see anything to be worried about there.
So we have a question in the chat. How the seventh and eighth factors of Eightfold Path are interconnected. Is it right that jhanas can be developed only after satipatthana or on the basis of satipatthana?
I see. Okay, within the satipatthana system, some of the meditation objects are capable of leading to jhana, particularly mindfulness of breathing. That's capable of leading to all four jhanas. And the contemplation of the body, the parts of the body, is said to be capable of leading to the first jhana. But it seems to me that the primary, purpose of the satipatthana system is to promote insight or to lead to vipassana. And there are other methods of meditation within the Buddhist system that are not in the satipatthana framework, but these methods lead to jhana. For example, they're called kasinas. The kasina is a disc which might be colored, a blue disc, a red disc, a white disc, a yellow disc. And the meditator just focuses on that colored disc till he gets a mental image of the disc. And then he focuses on the mental image in order to gain jhana. Yeah, another mode or type of Buddhist meditation that's said to lead to jhana is the Brahma Viharas. This would be states like loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. So those can be developed in a way that lead to the jhanas. Okay, we see any other questions now?
There is an additional question in the chat. So, in this light, is it not more logic to put Satipatthana to eighth place in the Eightfold Path, because the insight leads to liberation?
I think I could see the reason for that statement, but I think the idea here is that the practice of Satipatthana is a way of training the mind, basically training the mind in order to gain jhana. Yeah, even though only a few of the exercises in the Satipatthana system can lead to jhanas, and the main emphasis is on vipassana, but still one uses the Satipatthana to train and discipline the mind. But then after a meditator attains a jhana, though it's the eighth factor in the Noble Eightfold Path, it's not the end of the path. Yeah, after a meditator attains the jhanas, he will have to come out from the jhana and then contemplate the factors like the five aggregates in order to gain insight. And then that contemplation with insight is included under right view. So right view is of two different kinds. At the beginning of the path, there is, we call this preliminary right view, which is a conceptual or intellectual understanding of the teaching. And then as in a later stage of development, there is direct right view, which is the direct seeing of the truth of the teaching. Okay, any other questions here?
Yeah, we have one additional question in chat. No, two additional questions. What was the name of the sutta Bhante showed at the end? That was the Majjhima Nikaya 149.
Yeah.
It's the sutta of great basis. And the second question, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, if it is not too off topic, do you have advice for me to quell the hatred and anger that arises when I see one member of my family hurting another, either physically or verbally? How can I practice loving kindness towards both family members while one is hurt by the other?
Okay, so this is a very difficult situation. And this is just, I don't know, like the person and the dynamics in their family. But what I would say is that first, okay, one person is hurting another. First, for a few minutes, you generate loving kindness to both people, and then try to find an opportunity to bring the two people together and reconcile them, to unify them, and to explain how when one person is hurting another, how that brings harm to the entire family. and that we're members of one family, so we should love and respect each other. Yeah, I know that's easy to say, but sometimes hard to do. But one should try one's best. And if you develop these thoughts of loving kindness, it introduces a kind of pleasant and peaceful atmosphere into the family. And perhaps it will make the reconciliation, the unification of the two people easier. Okay, I think we're going to have to end for the morning. And we'll end with a sharing of the merits. So I will recite some verses for sharing the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mangtarang dukha pata chani dukha baya pata chani baya soka pata chani soka hantu sabekti panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all beings also be thus.